The desert winds of Planet X9 howled like dying beasts. The sky above was orange-red, filled with dust and firelight. Deep inside the rocky wasteland stood a forgotten human outpost. Rusting under the alien sun, Ronan sat alone in the main room, drinking from a metal cup. His outpost was quiet, always quiet. No visitors, no company, just machines and silence. He liked it that way. Or at least he had convinced himself he did. Then there was a knock. Ronan froze. There shouldn't be anyone here. The nearest colony was over 300 miles away, and the storm outside was deadly. He slowly stood up, grabbed his old plasma cutter, and moved toward the door. Another knock. This one was softer, almost like a plea. When he opened it, the wind roared in, slamming dust and light into his face. And in the doorway stood something or someone. A woman. No, not human. Her skin was pale violet, her hair matted and covered. In sand, she wore torn clothing that barely protected her from the storm. Her eyes were wide and glowing faintly, and her arms hugged her chest as if trying to hold herself together. She stepped forward, then collapsed in his arms. Ronan caught her before she hit the floor. She was light, too light. Bones more than flesh. Her body shivered with cold, and her lips moved silently before she spoke out loud. "I'll warm your bed," she whispered. "Just feed me." Ronan stood still, shocked. This wasn't the first time he'd heard that kind of offer during the war. Many desperate souls had begged soldiers for food or safety in return for their bodies. He'd always turned away from it, even back then. He lifted her gently and carried her inside, closing the door against the wind. The girl didn't move. She had passed out. Ronan placed her on his only cot, then grabbed a blanket and wrapped it around her. He checked her pulse, weak but there. Her legs had bruises, old wounds. Her hands were scratched and dirty, but her fingers still gripped the edge of the blanket like she was expecting it to be pulled away. He moved fast-heated water, boiled protein cubes, and mixed in his last pouch of preserved soup. Care. She needed it more than he did. An hour passed. The storm outside got worse.
Except for her soft breathing.
Then her eyes opened. She tried to sit up, panicking. Her voice cracked. Where? Where am I? Ronan raised both hands slowly, showing he meant no harm. "You're in my outpost," he said. "You passed out in the storm. You're safe." She stared at him. "Why didn't you take me?" Ronan blinked. "Take you," I said. "I'd warm your bed," she said quietly, looking down. "That's what I'm good for. That's what they all want." "I don't," he replied. She didn't believe him. He saw it in her eyes. He placed the soup bowl on the table next to her. "Eat. You need it." She hesitated, sniffing the food, then picked it up with shaking hands. She ate quickly, almost like an animal. Every bite was rushed, like someone might steal at any second. Ronan sat across the room, watching silently. He didn't ask questions. Not yet. After she finished, she leaned back, eyes half closed, body still trembling. He handed her a second blanket. "You can sleep here tonight. I'll take the floor." Again, she looked at him like he was some puzzle she couldn't solve. "Why?" she asked. "Why are you kind to me?" Ronan didn't answer right away, then said the floor, then said, "Because I know what it's like to be thrown away." He left the room before she could ask more. That night, he locked the door to his room from the inside. It's not to keep her out, but to keep himself from doing anything stupid. She was broken, scared, and alone. And he wasn't going to be the next man to take advantage of her. He lay awake on the cold floor. Staring at the ceiling outside, the wind screamed. Inside, the girl slept with one hand still clutching the blanket and her back pressed tightly to the wall. The next morning, the desert sky was calmer. But the silence inside the outpost was heavy. Ronan stepped into the main room, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. He had barely rested, his back sore from sleeping on the floor. He didn't see the girl at first, but he heard the soft clinking sound of utensils. She was crouched near the heating panel, holding his metal spoon like a weapon. Her violet eyes watched him closely, full of fear and warning. The bowl he gave her last night sat empty beside her. "You hungry again?" Ronan asked gently, not moving closer. She didn't answer, just nodded slowly. "I've got some protein packs left. Not good, but they'll fill your stomach." He walked over to the storage shelf, moving slow so she wouldn't think he was going to hurt her. As he pulled out another food pack, he noticed the corner of the blanket she'd been wrapped in soaked with blood. "Are you hurt?" he asked, looking back at her. The girl froze. Ronan crouched a bit and said, "Let me help." "Drone, an old one, but it works." She didn't answer. He powered up the small round drone that had sat unused for months. Its lights flickered to life and it floated toward her, tensed, pressing herself against the wall. "I'll just scan you, not touch." "You have control," Ronan said softly, holding up the remote so she could see. The drone scanned her body. In seconds, the results made Ronan's stomach turn. Fractures, surface burns, deep tissue bruises, old wounds, fresh wounds. Marks that looked like brands. Ronan didn't ask what happened. He had seen wounds like those before in prisoners. Slaves and desperate refugees during the war? She looked at him, eyes shining but angry. "Don't feel sorry for me. I'm used to it." Ronan shook his head. "I'm not sorry. I'm angry." She blinked. Surprised, he patched the worst cuts and gave her clean cloth to change into nothing fancy. Just an old human jumpsuit. Hung loose on her thin body, but it covered her well. She looked down at it like it was made of gold. "Why are you helping me?" she whispered, more confused now than afraid. "You're not trash," Ronan said, adjusting the med drone to stand by. "You're a person. You're safe here." She didn't answer. But later, he found her staring at his old military badge resting on a shelf. It was a black metal tag with a red human emblem, faded but still sharp. "You're from the Earth Fleet," she said quietly, backing away from it. Ronan nodded. "I was. A long time ago." Her body stiffened. "My village burned," she said slowly. "They wore that symbol." Ronan stood still. He looked her in the eyes. "I didn't do that. They killed everyone," she whispered, her voice breaking, said we were a threat, just because we wouldn't kneel. "I believe you," Ronan said. "That's why I left." Her eyes narrowed. "They don't let soldiers leave. They do when you refuse to kill innocent people," he replied. "That's why I'm stuck on this planet, fixing broken junk and living alone." She stared at him for a long time, searching, doubting, hoping. "What's your name?" Ronan asked. She shook her head. "They took that too," he frowned. "Then I won't ask again, but I hope you tell me someday." She looked away later that night. Ronan brought her another meal. She took it without a word. After eating, she sat near the window, watching the empty desert. "What are you thinking about?" he asked from across the room. "I thought I was going to die in that storm," she said. "I was ready for it, and now—" "No, I don't trust you. But you didn't hurt me. That's strange." Ronan stood and walked toward the door. "Where are you going?" she asked quickly, a trace of panic in her voice. "Just outside," he said. "To check the antenna. I'll be back." She didn't reply. He stepped out, letting the door close behind him. The desert night had returned, cooler, calm. Stars flickered above in a black sky. He didn't realize how long he stood there, looking, up, thinking. When he returned inside, the girl was gone. The room was quiet. Her blanket lay folded. The soup bowl was cleaned, and on the wall, scratched into the metal with a piece of wire, were 4 simple words. "I don't deserve this." Ronan didn't chase her. He read the words carved into the wall again. "I don't deserve this." Then sat down in silence. The storm outside had passed. But the one inside his chest had only grown louder. For 3 days, the outpost felt colder. He kept leaving food outside the main door in a thermal pack, hoping she'd come back. He worked during the day, fixing old equipment, checking radar logs, updating his reports that no one ever read. But at night, his ears listened for footsteps that never came, until the 4th night, he heard movement. Soft, careful. Not the wind, not the wind at all. He stepped into the hallway with a quiet breath. The lights were dim. And there she was, barefoot, wearing the same oversized jumpsuit, her skin dusty, hair tangled from wind and sand. She looked at him. He said nothing. She stepped past him, walked straight into his sleeping quarters, and climbed onto his bed. Then turned her back toward him and curled into a tight ball. Ronan followed slowly, stopping at the doorway. "I'll sleep here tonight," she said without facing him. He nodded. "Then I'll take the floor." Her fingers gripped the edge of the blanket. "I didn't come to offer anything," she said. "Not tonight. I just don't want to be alone." "You never had to offer anything," Ronan said gently. He lay down on the cold floor, using his coat as a pillow. Silence filled the room, broken only by the faint hum of the generator outside. Half an hour passed, then her voice came, low and steady. "They used to chain us at night. Said we might try to run in our sleep. Some did. They were punished." Ronan kept his eyes on the ceiling. "I wasn't pretty enough to be sold quickly," she continued. "They said I had a stubborn face, too proud. So I sat in a cage, while others disappeared." Still, Ronan didn't move. His hands lay flat on the floor, away from her, listening. That's all he did. "I tried to fight once," she said. "They broke my ribs. I couldn't breathe for days. After that, I stopped. Being me, I became whatever they needed." Ronan swallowed hard but said nothing. The room was still again, but heavy with her words. "I don't understand you," she said at last. "Good," Ronan whispered. "I mean it. Men always want something, especially when no one is watching. You live out here alone. Could have done anything to me." Ronan finally sat up. "You're not an object, not something to be taken or owned. You're a person, and you're hurting. That's all I see." She turned slowly to face him. "But why do you care? What do you get from this?" Ronan looked her in the eyes. A second chance. She blinked, surprised. "At what?" "At being human again," he said. "I lost that in the war." The silence that followed was not cold anymore. It felt like understanding. Later, she fell asleep, still on his bed, but breathing softly, not curled up in fear this time. Ronan didn't sleep much. He sat by the door, leaning against the wall, watching over her like a soldier guarding something precious. He knew she could leave again. He wouldn't stop her, but she didn't. The next morning, she woke up and found the bed empty. The smell of something warm drifted from the kitchen unit. She followed it, still quiet, still unsure, and saw Ronan stirring something in a metal pot. He glanced up as she entered. "Good morning," he said. "Food's almost ready." She stepped forward, then paused. "I don't know how to be." "Normal," she said. "Neither do I," he replied. "But we can start with breakfast." We poured the mix into 2 bowls and handed her one. She sat beside him, not across, not far, and for the first time, she smiled. Small, but real. "I used to think all humans were monsters," she said. "And I used to think I wasn't one," Ronan replied. She chuckled quietly. "You're strange. You too." She ate slower now, more carefully, as if food wasn't something to be stolen or traded, but shared. After they finished, she stood to clean the bowls. Ronan let her. Didn't offer help this time. She wanted to do something that mattered. Before she left the room, she turned and asked, "If I stay, can I choose my own name?" Ronan smiled. "I'd be honored to hear it." Asterisk, they came with the wind. Not the kind that howled through rocks and kicked up dust, but the silent kind. The kind that carried shadows in daylight. It's the kind that made even birds vanish from the sky. Ronan saw it first on his motion tracker, a slow pulse. Then 2, and many. "Something's moving," he muttered, adjusting the radar. East slope. Big Kala was cleaning a small metal cup by the sink. She glanced up, her face tense. "How many?" Ronan didn't answer right away. He stood up, crossed the room, and switched to long-range scan. The data loaded, 1 line at a time. 7, no, 8 vehicles. Ground skimmers. Modified for sand travel. No ID tags. "Bandits?" she asked, already gripping the edge of the counter. Ronan shook his head. Worse. Slavers. Gala froze. Then, her hands dropped the cup, shattered on the floor. They found me, she whispered, stepping back. How would they know you're here? Ronan asked, checking the door lock. She stared at the wall, as if seeing something far away. I escaped with a tracker in my body. I tried to cut it out, but I was too weak. Maybe it still works. Without a word, Ronan turned and opened the small tool drawer. He pulled out a sterilizer, a scanner wand, and a surgical knife. Sit. Down, he said. Kala didn't move. Sit, he repeated, more firmly now. She lowered herself onto the cot, shaking. Ronan scanned her neck, arms, chest. Nothing. Then he moved to her upper thigh. A beep. There it is. He nodded once and began the quick, sharp cut. She didn't flinch. Not once, but tears ran down her cheeks in silence. In less than a minute. It was out a tiny black chip. No bigger than a grain of rice. Ronan crushed it with a clamp. Then he opened the back door and tossed the pieces into the wind. But it was already too late. The sand reapers were close by sundown. They saw the first lights blinking on the ridge, green and red strobe slaver signals coded. Ronan recognized. The pattern. They're not here to talk, he said. Kala was sitting in the corner, arms wrapped around her knees. They'll burn your outpost, she whispered. Kill you, take me. No, he said. Not happening. You don't have weapons, she said. I have tools, he replied. Ronan moved like a man with purpose. He hadn't touched a weapon in years, but his hands still remembered. He pulled out old plasma coils, linked them to the metal fence outside. Then he rerouted power from the reactor, setting it to short burst overloads deadly if crossed. Kala followed him out as he stacked fuel tanks by the ridge path. You're rigging the slope? She said. Slavers always send scouts first. When they step here, he tapped a wire. They'll glow like fireflies. She looked at him, confused. You're not doing this just for me, she said slowly. You're doing it for something else. I'm doing it for everyone. They'll hurt if I don't stop them here. She nodded. But her face said more than her words. That night she asked a quiet question. Will you kill them? Ronan stood by the window, loading his last shock rifle with improvised cells. I don't want to, he said. But I'll do what I have to. Kala placed something on the table. It was his old fleet badge, the one she once feared. You're not who they were, she said. You fight different. Ronan picked up the badge, looked at it, then slid it into a drawer. I fight for something real now. The next morning, the ground trembled. The slavers came roaring through the canyonate desert skimmers with mounted guns and armor plating. Dust rose in clouds behind them. Ronan waited by the gate, calm, his rifle in one hand, detonator in the other. The first scout hit the slope. Boom. The sky lit up with fire and metal. One vehicle exploded, flipping sideways into a rock wall. Screams followed. The others pulled back and opened fire. Blaster shots hit the gate, shaking the outpost walls. Ronan fired back, hitting 2 targets. He didn't miss. Not today. Inside, Kala watched the monitor, her hands trembling. Not with fear, but fury. These are the same ones, she said. The ones who took me. I remember their colors. And let's end it, Ronan said. He moved fast, setting off the last trap. A fuel tank under the main path blew, sending 2 more skimmers crashing down the ravine. The rest turned to flee. But a drone, one of Ronan's oldest, chased them loaded with the last plasma charge. A flash. Then silence. It was over. Ronan returned to the main room, clothes torn, a cut across his forehead. Kala ran to him. You're bleeding. I've had worse. They're gone, she asked. He nodded. All of them. She looked at him for a long time, then whispered something he hadn't expected to hear. My name is Kala. He looked her in the eyes. It's a beautiful name. The battlefield was quiet now. Smoke curled through the rocks outside the outpost, rising into the pale sky. The wreckage of slaver skimmers lay scattered across the slope like broken bones. The air still smelled of fuel, fire, and something worse old. Pain finally released. Ronan sat at the edge of the outpost's ramp, cleaning his rifle with a slow, heavy hand. The blood on his sleeve had dried. The cut above his eye itched, but he didn't care. Behind him, the door creaked open. Kala stepped out, carrying 2 metal cups of water. Her face was tired but calmer. No longer a hunted animal, she handed him one. "You didn't have to do all this," she said softly. He took the cup, didn't look at her. "Yes, I did. They weren't after you. They came for me." "I know," Ronan replied. "But letting them take you again would have meant I didn't learn anything from the war." Kala sat beside him, careful not to touch him at first. Then after a moment, she leaned her shoulder just slightly against his arm. "I've never seen someone fight for me without asking for something in return," she said. Ronan finally looked at her. "You already paid me," she frowned. "How?" Looked toward the horizon, then said, "The day you knocked on my door and asked for food, you reminded me I'm not dead inside." Kala didn't speak. Her eyes burned gently, but not from pain. Inside, Ronan finally opened the cabinet where he kept his oldest things. A box from his fleet days, uniform pieces, war medals, and something else, his personal log drive. He hadn't touched it in years. He powered it up. The voice assistant blinked to life and asked, "Log update?" He hesitated, then typed, "Entry. A woman came to me hungry and broken. I gave her a meal. She gave me purpose." Kala entered the room as he closed the log. "What is that?" "It's something I used to write in when I thought I had something to say." She looked around the shelves. "You have so much stuff." "But nothing personal." "Stop collecting things when people started dying," Ronan said. "I'm not so sure that was the right choice." She walked to the other side of the room, picked up a small potted plant with dry soil. "You tried to grow something?" she asked. "I gave up halfway. Nothing survives here." She turned to him, holding the pot. "Maybe it's time we try again." That afternoon, Kala asked for something strange. "I want to cook." Ronan blinked. "You sure?" "It's mostly rations and old herbs." She smiled. "You gave me my first real meal. I want to return it." They worked side by side in the small galley. She boiled root slices while he rehydrated dried meat. The scent that filled the room wasn't much, but it was different from before. When they sat to eat, Kala waited until Ronan took the first bite. He blinked in surprise. "This actually tastes like food." She laughed. "That's the goal." Watched her smile as she ate slowly, no longer desperate, no longer rushing like it might be taken away. "Why do you look at food like that?" he asked. She paused. "'Cause I remember the first time I didn't have to sell myself for it." Ronan's grip on his spoon tightened. He set it down. "You'll never have to again." Kala nodded once, then leaned forward and said, "You changed." "Me? You gave me the idea that I could be something more than a thing." "You always were more," Ronan said. "No," she said firmly. "I needed someone to show me." That evening, they stood outside the outpost watching the sun set behind the ridge. Kala pointed at the wreckage in the distance. "They'll send more," she said. "Probably," Ronan agreed. "Word travels fast when slavers lose money." Looked at him. "What will we do?" He turned toward her. "We'll build something stronger." "A wall? No?" he said. A message. The next morning, Ronan sent a signal from his old cum dish, encrypted, short, just a few words to any ships orbiting within range. It read, "Outpost 14 is no longer silent. We are sheltering survivors. If you come to harm them, you'll better bring an army." He wasn't sure who would receive it. Traders, smugglers, ex-soldiers, maybe even the Earth fleet. But that didn't matter. The message was sent, and Kalashi stood beside him the whole time, watching it go. Later that day, as they fixed the outer fence together, she asked him something quiet. "If I had offered my body that first night, would you have taken it?" Ronan stopped working, looked her in the eyes. "No," she nodded. "Why not?" she asked. "Because you were starving. You didn't need a bed. You needed a home." Kala didn't say anything else, but for the first time, she reached out. Hand held his hand. Asterisk, it started with one bowl of soup. Now, kitchen smelled like life. Steam rose from the pot, filled with herbs Kala had found growing near the rocks. She had begun exploring in the early mornings, not to run away anymore, but to gather, to give. Her hands, once used only to survive, now moved gently through spice mixes and root slices. Ronan watched her from across the room. She didn't know he was watching, not in the way someone watches a stranger, but the way someone watches the sun return after too many dark nights. "You're getting better at this," he said. She looked up, smirked. "At cooking?" "At living." Her smile faltered for just a second, like the words still didn't sit right in her bones. Then she stirred the soup again. "I didn't know what hunger really meant until I was full," she said softly. "It wasn't about food. It was about not being wanted. It's not being seen." Ronan leaned against the wall, arms folded, and now I feel fed in ways I didn't know I was starving. Later they sat outside the outpost near the broken solar panels, now turned into a shaded bench. The sky was clear. Wind was quiet for once. Kala held a tiny notebook. Ronan hadn't known she had one. She flipped through its worn pages and then asked, "Will you help me write something?" Ronan raised an eyebrow. "I thought you didn't like words." "I didn't," she said, "until yours didn't hurt me." She handed him the notebook and pointed to a blank page. "I want to name this place." He thought for a moment. "What do you want to call it?" She smiled. "The first meal?" Ronan stared at the page, then slowly wrote the words down. They both knew it meant more than food. That same week, the first signal came back. A reply to Ronan's warning transmission. A trader ship, old, patched together but fast. 3 clicks from the outpost. Ronan grabbed his rifle just in case, but Kala stopped him. "You gave a message of hope," she said. "Let's meet them with the same." He nodded. Together, they walked toward the landing point. The trader was human, middle-aged, one arm replaced with cybernetics, the other raised in greeting. 2 companions followed behind him, a small alien child and a silent woman with sharp eyes and scars on her neck. "You Ronan?" The man asked. "I am. We heard your call. We don't want trouble, but we have people who need a place." Ronan looked at Kala. She gave the smallest nod. "You found one," Ronan said. By nightfall, the outpost was louder than it had been in years, not with noise, but with breath. With footsteps, with voices that didn't whisper in fear. Kala made soup for everyone, using what little she had, while Ronan pulled out old Matt's blankets. Anything that could be used for comfort. One child stared at Kala as she served him. A bowl, he didn't speak. He just touched her hand, then quickly sat in the corner, holding the bowl like it was treasure. She turned to Ronan with wet eyes. "He looks like me. When I first came here," Ronan touched her shoulder. "And now look at you." In the days that followed, the outpost changed. Kala taught the women how to use the kitchen units. Ronan fixed bunk beds and installed new water filters. The fences were reinforced, the antenna tower raised higher. Kala found herself becoming something more. She wasn't just someone being helped, she was helping. She sat with the children at night and told them stories not of pain, but of stars, of freedom, of names. Names she helped them choose. And every evening after they all slept, she'd sit with Ronan by the window, watching the moons rise. And every evening, she'd ask a question. Not because she was afraid, but because she was learning what it meant to be alive. "Do you ever wonder why me?" she asked one night. "Why not leave me out there? Why take me in?" Ronan looked at her, then said, "Because if I had left you, I would have lost the last good thing in me." She stared at him for a long moment, then leaned forward, pressed her forehead to his. No words, it's just warmth. The next morning, she stood in the kitchen alone. A new girl from the trader ship walked in, thin, tired, cautious. Kala handed her a bowl and said, "You don't owe me anything. Eat." The girl stared. In disbelief, Kala smiled gently. "I once offered everything for one meal. Someone said no and gave me the whole world instead." They came from everywhere, one by one, in ones and twos. Some limped, some crawled, came in rusted ships that coughed smoke. Others walked across sand with nothing but a demand, some not even that, but they came. Ronan and Kala stood outside. The outposts, each time a stranger arrived, they no longer asked, "Who are you?" They asked, "Are you hungry?" Because here, that was how it always began. Food was the first language. The outpost looked nothing like it did weeks ago. The empty rooms now held bunk beds made from broken panels. The fence, once meant to keep people out, now protected a small garden. Old water tanks became bathing drums. A wrecked skimmer had been turned into a classroom. Calla stood in that classroom now, helping a little girl write her name for the first time. The girl asked, "What does my name mean?" Calla smiled. "It means you exist. It means you matter." Evening, Calla returned to the kitchen and found Ronan standing at the counter, covered in flour. "You're baking?" She blinked. Ronan shrugged. The kid said it was his birthday. She burst into laughter, the kind that sounded like it had been hiding in her chest for years. You know, that's just a word, right? Birthday? It doesn't even know what day he was born? Then we give him a new one, Ronan said, brushing flour off his arm. A better one. No. Calla stepped closer and took the mixing bowl from him. "You're terrible at this," she teased. "I saved the galaxy. Once. That doesn't mean I can bake." "You didn't save the galaxy," she smirked. "You saved me." He looked at her and said nothing. But his silence said everything. That night, after the children fell asleep and the lights dimmed, Calla stood by the window, watching the stars. She had once looked up at them and seen nothing but cold. Now they reminded her of something else. Every star a name. Every name a person who survived. She felt Ronan come stand beside her. "There's a ship in orbit," he said quietly. She turned. "Fleet looks like it." She stepped back, her chest tightening. "They found us." "Maybe," Ronan said, "but I don't think they're here to destroy." He walked to the console and opened the comm line. A voice crackled through. "This is Commander Tev of the Earth Fleet. We received your broadcast. We've reviewed your logs, requesting permission to land. We would like to help." Calla stared at Ronan. He turned to her. "Your choice." She hesitated, then said two words that changed everything. "Let them." The Earth Fleet shuttle landed, its doors opened slowly. No weapons drawn, no soldiers in armor. Just a woman in a blue uniform. Older, calm. "I'm Commander Tev," she said. Ronan stepped forward. "You know who I am?" She nodded. "The man who stopped a slaver raid, who protected survivors, who turned a dead outpost into something worth saving." Calla stood beside him. The commander looked at her, then lowered her voice. "And you must be the one he built all this for." Calla didn't speak, just stepped aside and opened the door to the outpost. Fleet engineers worked with Ronan to upgrade the systems. A new water line, solar shields, medical bay with real beds. But they didn't take control. They asked. They listened. They followed. And when one of the engineers asked Ronan, "What should we call this place on the maps?" he didn't answer. Calla did. The first meal. 1 month later, the outpost was marked on every Earth Fleet map as a humanitarian zone, a safe house, a sanctuary, a home. But for Ronan and Calla, it was still something smaller, something deeper. Each evening, they shared dinner together. Even when surrounded by new faces and laughter, one night, Calla placed something on the table in front of him. It was her old chain collar now, snapped in two. "I want to melt it." "Down," she said. "Turn it into spoons for the kitchen." Ronan nodded. And then softly she added, "Or maybe a ring." He looked up, eyes searching hers. "Calla." She took his hand. "You saved me from being forgotten," she said. "Now, I want to spend my life remembering." Outside, the wind passed gently over the dunes. Inside, where it was once silent and cold, laughter echoed, and the smell of warm soup floated through the air. A place for the lost, the broken, the unwanted. But no one here was unwanted anymore. Not ever again.